Getting social in response to the latest banking crisis? Check. Getting Hurd on Hurd? Check, check. And earning a reputation for being responsive and available? Well, that's a check, check, check in my book. Folks, the business of banking is never boring. Something today's guest, Jill Castilla, the president and CEO of Citizens Bank of Edmond, certainly has not been accused of being. So I'm Al Dominic with one of my most creative partners, Steve Williams.
Hey, Al.
And this is Plugged In from Cornerstone Advisors. So Steve, hello. Would you like to say hello to our friend Jill?
It's the legend. Jill, good to talk to you again. It's always great. And like Al, I feel like I'm in touch with you on social media all the time, but to be talking live is an honor. Great to see you.
So great to see you, Steve and Al. Great to be on.
The team at Cornerstone just thinks Jill is just like top of the mountain when it comes to conversation. So we've got a big job in front of us. We got to make sure that we keep our colleagues listening to this. And certainly we want to explain some of the things that we find interesting about banking and see if Jill agrees with us. And like we normally do on Plugged In, we're going to use some fun musical references to keep our conversation maybe not as centered as you would expect, but certainly moving along. So, Steve, you and I have a lot of fun putting these playlists together. Today is no exception. I think we want to start with something that just gives our appreciation and thanks to Jill and her family for their service to this country.
Absolutely right. And Jill,
take us.
Yeah, for those who want to read more on Jill, it's out there. Please do. It's a fascinating story, but a lot of military service in your family. So we wanted to pick a song by Toby Keith, American Soldier. I'm an American soldier, an American. Besides my brothers and sisters, I will proudly take a stand. When liberty's in jeopardy, I will always do what's right. And not only are you married to a retired Lieutenant Colonel Marcus, but your family also, your sons also have military service. We want to talk about how do you bring that to banking? What has that given you, yourself being in the Army, being around a military family? How's that influenced you as a leader and a banker?
Wow, that's a big question. And Toby Keith, fellow Oklahoman, so couldn't be a better choice from a song standpoint.
That's right. We had to get some Oklahoma. You're going to have some Oklahoma in here, Jill.
That's right. So I think there's so many parallels when it comes to the military framework, discipline, bureaucracy, some of the progressive nature of warfare, and how you have to stay relevant, but then you can also get really stuck in the past and not be as relevant. So I think from a military standpoint, I enlisted as a 19-year-old private. So the leadership extremes really of my military service and what I get to do in banking. But there's the ethical foundation. I mean, that's the number one piece of it. Whenever you're a soldier, whether you're a private, you're expected to have these very high integrity, to obey orders, except for the ones that are illegal, and no one gives you explicitly what illegal really means. And the same as with banking, you have to everything in banking starts with integrity, where fiduciaries to, custodians, depositors. And then we also, if we don't do the right thing when it comes to lending, then the community fails. And so there's just that foundation, I think, of ethics and integrity that both rely so heavily upon, and if there are dire consequences if that's not upheld.
Yeah. Jill, I work with some West Point grads who, though they had that discipline and were fabulous, they couldn't get creative. And I've noticed that you've been able to use that as a foundation, though, but be creative, be a little loose, be a little test and learn as well.
Yeah. And I think honestly, that's different between being enlisted in the military and being an officer. They have a lot more responsibilities and focus on them. When you're enlisted, you're expected to have hip pocket training. You're always maximizing your time and downtime. While the officers are planning everything and can't have really failure. If they have failure, then it's a poorly planned endeavor, or they didn't adjust appropriately. Whereas when you're enlisted, you're on the ground and you're expected to adjust, and you're expected to read the situation and avoid failure, maximize opportunities that, where you thought there was exposure, but actually it turned out to be something differently. You had to pivot more quickly. You're like really on the ground. And I think that's really what being a community banker is about. You're in the grocery store aisle, you're feeling the economy and what's happening. I sit behind the teller line. I can see anxiety or elation in our customers coming in. And you're able to make those little adjustments, which really leads to innovation. I mean, innovation is really having a good feel of what people want and need before they can tell you that that's what they want and need. And I think that's really, there's a lot of parallels that being enlisted kind of brings over.
I love it. The enlisted is like the community banker on the ground. And we do feel like you're one of those leaders out there kind of fighting for the soul of banking and love what you do. We feel like we're trying to build that fight as well. So now, kind of tied to that, going with change and evolving, you've got the next song up for Jill.
I do, but I can't miss this opportunity to give you a little grief, Steve, because you clearly haven't been working with anyone that went to Annapolis. The midshipmen are known for being creative. If you're just watching Army-Navy game, go Navy, beat Army. I say that as a son whose dad played football for Navy, and I love watching the midshipmen take care of business.
And the Army-Navy game at Jill's house must be real exciting to watch.
Got to be epic.
Family dynamics.
Our daughter is a cheerleader in Navy, and she doesn't allow us to cheer in her presence for anyone. So,
well, look, all credit to the Black Knights, but I'm going to be going midshipman this year and every year in the future. So anyway, Steve's right. We do want to shift away from kind of your background into some of the things that are happening right now to the industry as a whole, and we are responding still to this banking crisis that we're all a part of in different ways. Steve was really nice to use Toby Keith. I'm going to use another Oklahoma-based band. This is the All American Rejects, whose song "Move Along" some of us may be familiar with. Gosh, I wish my voice was better so I could use these lyrics to say, when all you've got to keep is strong, move along, like I know you do. And even when your hope is gone, move along just to make it through. So in some ways, I just want to start by asking, like, what's on your mind right now, given the really disappointing failures of 4 banks, all the scrutiny that has been placed by the general public on the business of banking relative to what a community bank like yours does for its community on a regular basis?
I mean, I don't think there's ever been a better time to tell our story as community bankers and what is our purpose and why are we here and what makes us different. And I wish there was more of us that were using our voices more broadly to tell the stories. We talk to our communities and our customers, I think, consistently, but we're not great about broadcasting that message more nationally. And there's such a great opportunity with almost 4,000 banks that are under $1 billion to be able to say to the country that there's choice and there's technological relevance, there's care, and there's solid risk management that you can find in smaller institutions.
Yeah, see, I get a little disappointed, though, because I feel, and I agree with you, but I feel like we've been talking about this, kind of unfortunate narrative that bankers have allowed over the years to be defined for them. And so I think about the last few years of COVID with the PPP rollout and all the goodwill that was generated by banks of all sizes doing some really incredible things for their client base. And then all of a sudden we have, again, this run of trust on institutions that are, for the most part, much larger than most banks in the U.S. And we're right back to square one of, well, can we trust a bank? And that to me is really, when Steve says we want to fight, it's not to, get into something nefarious. It's more to say, hey, let's not lose sight of the fact that community banks really are fundamental to the overall fabric of a community and can do some really great things. And, I mentioned Hurd on Hurd earlier. Maybe you could just kind of explain that origin story, because it really shines light on how a bank like yours has made investments before it was cool to do something like that.
So Citizens, when I came on board in 2009, was a turnaround situation. And once we were emerged from our turnaround, we decided that we wanted to be around for another 120 years. And in doing so, the branch network wasn't serving us well to be able to have that long-term success. So we sold all our branch locations, kept the deposits, and we didn't sell the customers, and decided we were just going to be in our original downtown Edmond home, where we've been for 122 years now. But the downtown area was depressed. It's a low, moderate income tract, lots of empty storefronts, historic downtown. Started before statehood. We were 1901 founding. Statehood was 1907. And then it was just this very sleepy, depressed part of our community that's a very affluent community. Didn't really make a lot of sense. So we decided to, when we did our SWOT analysis, one of our weaknesses was location. And so wanted to gaps, I think that you can find a lot of creativity is by flipping your weaknesses to strengths, your threats to opportunities. And we certainly made that our focus for our location. How do we make downtown Edmond a destination so that you're coming to the bank and enjoying a place? How do you place make? And so we had the largest food truck festival in the nation was just down the street in Oklahoma City. We were sponsoring that event, and then Edmondites started saying, why can't we have something like this in Edmond? So we worked with the city and the bank, just our 55 team members, planned and orchestrated a local music festival that at first had just a few food trucks and pop-up shops. We had to guarantee the food trucks that they would have a minimum amount of customers, and then they sold out that first night. We had 3,000 people show out. Now we regularly have 55,000 people come to a bank celebration. We're in our 10th season. We do it 8 times a year, every third Saturday, 6 to 10 p.m., 3 local bands, 60 plus small businesses and food trucks. Our team plans and pays for the entire event. It's changed our downtown. We now have $250 million in developments that are underway in our little downtown community. The economic impact alone has been over $80 million just for that 4 hours every third Saturday.
This is the cool stuff that we just need to amplify. These are the stories that I really hope people take and say, I want to do something like that. So Steve, you and I talk a lot about creativity and how do you take creativity and monetize it. I think this is essentially the definition of innovation these days. You want to play off this?
Yeah, I want to. So when you say 55,000 people, I start to think about another Oklahoman, Mr. Garth Brooks, if we headed up to Stillwater, Oklahoma, Jill, right, and maybe we got a burger at Eskimo Joe's. But he's got a great song, if you're a fan of his, Standing Outside the Fire, where he says, they're so hell-bent on giving walking a wire, convinced it's not living if you stand outside the fire. So Al and I were joking, you live inside the fire. You've done everything from called up Mark Cuban for PPP to done drive-up banking to done what you just described in terms of changing downtown Edmond. What are you excited about right now? If we were to hang out in your conference room for the next couple weeks, what's your team talking about next when it comes to innovation, and what kind of fintech partnerships might play into that innovation?
Well, blame it all on my roots. I am.
You showed up in your boots and
right.
ruined a black tie affair.
There we go.
Right. But you would hear a lot. It's for a small bank, just one location, 55 people, been around forever. You would hear a lot of projects that are going on. We're launching a military-focused bank, basically a challenger bank to USAA and Navy Federal Credit Union in the next couple weeks. I'm really excited about that. I enlisted at 19, very economically fragile, and a family member stole all my money when I was away at training. And so this is going to be really a way in which we can set up service members for success no matter where they are in their careers. We're also partnering with a fintech company to have a national account opening, just top best of breed account opening system. They'll take 2 minutes to open an account, and we're expanding that into business accounts. But one of the most fun and just like recent emerging opportunities has been our partners with the VC community. Whenever we saw SVB fail and Signature Bank fail and First Republic, we knew that there were VCs in our community that were banking with these banks. And so we reached out to them and say, okay, what can we do? What services did they have that you're missing, that these deposits can't stay here in Oklahoma? And we were able to call a few fintech friends and get some really fast implementations completed to really be the only bank in Oklahoma that can serve founders and the VC community in a way that they're accustomed to in the back. And we're able to do that in a 2-week time period. So the team has some longer term projects, like I mentioned, but also we can hustle and get something implemented in pretty short order to serve customers.
Well, getting those deposits in this time when everyone's looking for liquidity, that's a big short-term win. And like you said, it's that enlisted banker just getting it done.
That's exactly
That's
right.
awesome.
Yeah, it is. And I think this goes to the credibility that you've built as an individual and really the leadership that you've exhibited over the years, that you can walk into these conversations and have people say, Jill's not going to waste my time. She's going to be there for me, in good times and in bad. I think that's a really important leadership lesson that people need to pay attention to. Steve and I, again, we like to crib off each other and use some Oklahoma bands. I'm going to throw him a little bit of a curveball because I know he did this with his daughter earlier this year. He went to a Taylor Swift concert. I was driving carpool this morning for my 14-year-old daughter and her friends, and we were listening to, of course, a little Taylor, and Karma came on. And that song has been stuck in my head the entire day. So Karma, me and Karma vibe like that, I think is the lyric. But man alive, I think about how Taylor Swift has really just created a brand and, just this incredible following. And I'm not trying to draw a parallel from Taylor Swift to Jill Castilla, but you have developed a national reputation for being available and responsive and respected. And I remember meeting you years ago where you basically told me, you said, why wouldn't I say yes to opportunities? Why wouldn't I say yes to speaking? Why wouldn't I say yes to helping somebody out? So I'd love if you could just kind of take us back to that moment where you realized as a leader, you could really impact others with your behavior.
Well, it was really lucky. It didn't feel lucky at the time, but we were at the trouble condition bank back when I came in 2009. And the only thing that really kept depositors with us was being just ever present and accountable and honest and transparent and giving them just complete access to me 24/7, pulling out non-public information and sharing it, always protecting customer information, but the bank's information was just basically free for all. And you see how that kind of vulnerability of like, this is our numbers and they're terrible, but this is how we're fixing them, that's really what created connections and trust. It wasn't being perfect. And as I've gone through the years, as we've had crises, whether it's COVID or community situations, and sometimes not knowing what to do, but being just authentic and engaged makes all the difference. And the community, like being able to tap like credit, fintech or, great resources throughout our ecosystem, that's all only available to me because you showed up for other people and you just consistently showed up without any consideration what you were getting in return, just knowing that you were going to be a good friend out to the community, to people that maybe you didn't even know, but you're going to be a good friend to them. And then in those times of needs, what you find is that people are really good friends to you. It's a really lovely, industry to be a part of, and people are really good and they want to do work with good people. I think whenever you start chasing your own self-interest or even profitability first, profitability, we're for-profit companies, but whenever you have that top of mind, it becomes less authentic. But when you can find where you can really help people, it draws good people in with you.
Yeah, and I really appreciate how you invite people into the business of banking. If you go onto LinkedIn, if you look on Jill's, profile, you have a video explaining camel ratings. You have things that are,
Right.
They're not necessarily what a social influencer would be trying to put up, but I think you do a great job of saying, hey, you know what? This is the world that we live in, and we have to help you understand. Right. We get this, and you don't have to worry about it, but we're going to be fully transparent.
It might not knock off a Charlie D'Amelio TikTok in the near future, but it's something that, for bankers, it's kind of, I would geek out on it, and I think it's good to educate. And Al, one thing I would joke about, and it's actually not a joke, is Jill's been very transparent. Call me or text me. If I was a 61-year-old banker with a $1 billion bank and looking at this, I would call Jill and do a reverse merger saying, hey, we're bigger, but let's merge and give you the scale, Jill, and you run the place with this innovation. Are you getting, I know you can't talk, but is there interest in M&A? I think you would be great on top of an even bigger platform. Is that not interest you, Jill, or is that something that might happen with this strong team you've built at Citizens?
It's not something that we've pursued. I think it would have to be a really unique situation for us to have that interest, and it would have to be like we get lots of interest in people trying to acquire us and acquire our team.
Right.
That's not on at all something that I wouldn't stay here if that's the play. We're trying to build something special. I think it was something to what you're talking about, more of a reverse aspect. We'd be interested in that. We're limited in our capital, and the team is the largest shareholder through our employee stock ownership plan. So we have to think about scaling profitability, not asset size. So M&A is not something I'm at all pursuing. It's something that I try to discourage in the industry. because like there's such strength in being independent. But I don't think that's completely out of the realm of possibility.
Now that's contrarian. Could you touch a little on why you discourage M&A? Because that's interesting to Al and I.
I think diversity is strength, and whenever you have, it would be different if we were having de novo starting at the same pace that consolidation was occurring. So, but whenever we're talking about, we see what happens when we have consolidated larger regional institutions, and if they fall into times of vulnerability, then we're having not systemically important institutions become systemically important, and whenever you start having multiple of those, it starts making no sense. I think also, I'm in love with the community banking ideal of like a George Bailey type of figure who's a steward of their community, who is in the middle of being accountable both from the health of the institution, but also the health of the economy that he's contributing to. I think you lose something that's really precious whenever those types of individuals go away, or whenever they get scaled too big that they can't pay attention, when they can't sit in the lobby, when they can't provide their cell phone number.
It's real hard to scale that, and people try. And I always joke when that local president becomes the quote market president of Big Bank Inc., they seem to fade away and disappear. Or if they show up to the chamber meeting, they have like a gloss in their eyes, like they're not there. So I do agree with you that, how you keep that engagement and that kind of co-vesting of the economy locally is something that is really interesting. At what scale, it's always up for debate. But we agree with you that diversity and even redundancy is a system of, part of strength. And, I want to keep on controversy, because another thing you've been writing about, Jill, it's kind of like my man Springsteen just breaking out and saying, we were born to run. Deposit insurance has been something that Al and I have seen you write about. And you're not the typical banker saying, let's have everything insured. Please come in and give us subsidy or relief right now. You're saying we can do it right now under the system we have. And given your size, that's very contrarian. So tell our listeners, what are your thoughts on deposit insurance? Where do we go from here, given what's happened during 23?
I think if you are confident in the strength and soundness of your bank, then you would not be running towards unlimited deposit insurance. If you're not wanting to have difficult conversations that require structuring customer accounts so that you can mitigate any of their concerns through using networks that have insurance availability, then I think that you're also not a great banker. So I think sometimes and even the scalability question, I think that I get a lot of people, and even folks within Cornerstone have given me a hard time. Jill's not scalable. I mean, I have 14,000 deposit customers. There's $4 billion banks in my community that don't have that many customers, and their CEOs up in the ivory tower, and suddenly they're scaled. Well, I mean, they just have bigger depositors and not as many of them.
Tell us who at Cornerstone give you a hard time. We're gonna take care of those fools.
Take them out and back and rub them.
Ron's told me a few times, and it's not scalable. But I do think it is. I think that when you talk about the numbers, it is completely scalable to be accessible. And I think sometimes as bankers, it's easier to get in the ivory tower. It's easier to have the gatekeepers and to separate yourself from the community, because you have less accountability. There's less. I mean, I get people that are angry, people that are sad, people that are anxious. You see the whole realm of human emotion in this position, and it can be really hard. And so, especially whenever it's the final answer is you. But I think it's absolutely essential for the success of our industry and that trust. And I think that's where you do need a government subsidy. If you're not willing to be the person that they're not like, okay, Joe's accountable or Jill's accountable. But if you want the government to be the one saying that our banks are safe and sound because of a safety net that we provided, rather than saying we run great banks in America, and we also have deposit insurance to mitigate some of the risk of a run. But to have that be the lead, then you might as well just nationalize banking.
Interesting. Yeah, I might fall a little bit more on, could we increase a little and get some small business coverage? But I appreciate what you're saying, and I appreciate all the hustle around things like IntraFi to build that. It's the hard work of relationship management. And it's a good call to action for everybody right now. Get out there and don't just let the deposits leave. Really have the discussions you guys are having.
Well, there's just no need with the Reg D going away during COVID. You can sweep to a money market and have that money market sweep to IntraFi and come back, and customers are earning more interest. It's harder on the bank from a spread standpoint. But before that, yeah, I totally understand why you might want to need like a transaction account guarantee, because you didn't have the ability to sweep back and forth. You were limited in number of transactions out of a non-transaction account, but that doesn't exist anymore. So that's where I think banking has changed, and we haven't realized that it's changed.
Yeah. Well, as we open, banking is never boring. And one of the things I think both Steve and I appreciate is you're showing that diversity really is the spice of life. And so if we can keep fighting the good fight, if we can keep creativity at the forefront of what we do, then I think this industry has just some magnificent opportunities for people to do some really cool things for great communities that will appreciate them time and time and time again. So I just want to say this is a big time thanks for your service to our country, to your community, to our industry, and really for joining Steve and I today and getting plugged in with us. So he's Steve Williams. She's Jill Castilla. I'm Al Dominic. I'm signing off from our nation's capital, but I look forward to our next episode of Plugged In.
Thanks so much, Jill.
Thank you.